Hello, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage in the beautiful, blustery state of Maine. It's a windy day, but I'm inside, so who cares? Other than I can hear the roof and the walls vibrating. I've been going over the pile of parts that I've bought for the 56 Chevy 210 Handyman wagon. And you know how it goes if you followed along at all. A lot of times I see something at night and I go ahead and buy it. Sometimes I regret it in the morning. But my initial plan, when I hadn't even gone through all the parts yet, I knew I had 3 totes of parts that came with the car, that if the trim and the door handles and stuff weren't any good, that I would just, paint them black pretty much. Kind of like the Dart is. Somebody's painted all the handles and stuff on that black. I don't think they're powder coated. I think they're just painted, but they seem to be doing okay so far. And that was kind of the plan. I did find the 2 handles with screws, Phillips head screws, 1956. But they are pitted really bad, so I would have to blast and sand, and they probably would have been okay. And then shopping for right around 50 bucks, you can buy a whole new handle, imported, I'm sure. But importantly, it comes with the little gaskets. Now I could make that, but I thought they would be molded. Turns out they're not, but they are pretty precision fit. And they definitely came with nice bolts, and for 50 bucks they were ready to put on. So, got some handles. I didn't have any outside door mirrors. I knew I wanted one at each side. So I bought a pair of mirrors, once again, 50 bucks. Took a while to get these, but I'm just reading the check marks on the back. And one is a standard exterior mirror, and the other one is a convex. Obviously, it would go on the passenger side, so gotta keep an eye out for that. Let me show you what else I got. The wagon came with 2 left side taillights, that flips down for the gas door. I don't have a right taillight. I don't see why I can't put 2 lefts in. I haven't investigated whether that's even possible, but I went ahead and bought some stuff to retrofit them. I bought what should have been LED brake and turn lenses, because this is all you have back there. I figured it would be better than probably an incandescent bulb or converting the socket to LED. If I just bought the actual LED lenses with the, it comes built in the back. Unfortunately, they sent me regular lenses, so I'm fixing that. I bought the gaskets for the tail lights when I rebuild them. I bought new reverse lights. I only had 1 reverse light, and it's pretty toasty, so. And my goal on the reverse light was to take the 1156 style socket, retrofit it under the lens, and put an LED bulb in for the backup lights, so it'll be all LED in the back. And then do the same thing for the front marker lenses as well. So I bought some 1157 style sockets, so I should be able to retrofit the front. I have new front lenses coming, because I believe I only have 1 of those. And I have 2 headlight bezels, I believe. I'm missing a lot of stuff, but I'm just, in my mental inventory, when I've only looked at my whole pile of parts twice, but I'm pretty sure I'll be able to piece most of the front end together. I still need the valance and the front bumper and some of the side chrome. So much trim. So much trim. So anyway, that's the taillight situation. I can work on those when I get the right lenses, in my spare time. What's more important with a car that doesn't have an engine or anything else to be thinking ahead at wiping? The windshield. And I bought a new second-hand, never installed, I should say, electric wiper conversion. It comes with the switch and everything wired. I'd already played with the piece on the firewall that makes the wipers go back and forth, and I can see this hooks right into that, so that looks pretty simple. Time will tell. On one of my many orders for other transmission parts lately, I bought some Dan Chuck wiper arms. They're so small. So small and tiny, and couple of 12-inch, nothing fancy, replacement wiper blades. If they look silly, I'll buy the stainless ones or whatever, but I'm not going for, you know, a beauty contest here. I'm going for functional. Also, Dan Chuck seems to be popular stuff. Made in USA. This is a full set of body mounts for the two-door wagon. If I'd paid attention, for another $11, you can have the bolts too. I didn't get the bolts, so I'm sure I have enough hardware to do it, but it would have been handy to have everything all in the right bag. Over here on the table, I finally got my motor mount conversion kit. Kit is a relative term. There's no instructions or anything, but it's pretty intuitive, so I think if I get some time, I'm going to work on that. I bought a couple universal headlight mounts, mounts, because 56 headlight buckets are all their own. I have one that's pretty rough. So I don't know if the trim ring hooks into the headlight bucket. I haven't really looked yet, or if I can make these work. Time will tell. I'll get back to you on that. Bought a cheap drive shaft loop. You've seen all the stuff in this box. That's the spring relocation and some clutch Z-bar and some miscellaneous hardware. I couldn't pass this up. This was on Jegs, and it was, I want to say, $11 to $12. Just a laminated wiring diagram for a 56 Chevy. It's upside down. Sorry about that. But even if I never do anything, just hang it on the wall, I thought it was pretty cool. I'm going to put an aftermarket wiring harness in it, so I'm not sure how handy this will be, but using the stock switches and stuff, it does call out what each position does, so it looked like it was definitely worth the money. Speaking of that, for less than 20 bucks, you can buy the assembly manual. I didn't know this one wasn't bound, so I got to get a 3-ring binder. They sell basically two of them, this one and another one, the other brand manual whose name eludes me at the time. I have one for my 49 Chevy over there and my Novas, and while it is bound and everything, the quality of the print isn't as good as this one. So this one's definitely clearer, and I can come up with a old 3-ring binder to put it in. So that's handy because I have no idea how half the windows and trim hook in. So you can see I got her up on the left, and I did put the door handles and the mirrors on. And just to, you know, fight myself, I did it in this position where I couldn't open the doors all the way. And you got to fish your way up from the inside. But hey, the door's open and closed now without having to stick your finger in the hole. That's pretty awesome. And then I had some time, and I need to get the brake lines out of the way because the motor mounts are going to go where those 2 rivets are currently. Then I'll have to drill some holes back here, I assume. So it was interesting. I started taking all the brake lines, like they say down south, I was taking them loose. I never heard that till I started watching YouTube. And when you get back here with this brand new brake line, the nut is tight, but the line is loose. It spins. I don't know what's going on there. I have to actually hold the brake hose and get a tube nut wrench to get it loose. It's so tight, but it's not tight on the line, so that would have been a leak. And I'm taking the fuel line out as well. They snaked it through everything. Again, I won't run it external. And they attached it to the frame with, sorry if I make you sick with the camera, about every type of self-tapping or non-self-tapping screw you can think of, with different size heads and whatnot. I'm not really much of a self-tapper guy, but I guess in this case it works okay. But like I say, I'll be running the brake and fuel lines inboard of the frame. Removing the fuel line, I'm no expert, but I don't think that kink's gonna work. It must be for fuel economy. Well, that escalated quickly. Fuel lines, brake lines, shocks, and these tailpipes that Houdini himself must have put in. Because they were, you had to be an escape artist to get them out. Everything your mother told you about wagon tanks is totally true. That won't come out of there. Well, either removing the rear end or jacking up the body. it pretty much has sealed its fate that it's not going to get a wagon tank. And I'll just cut the spare tire out and put a traditional tank there. We'll see. I'm concerned the 9-inch Ford might not clear the tank, but I haven't done any research. I will. Well, I'm glad I didn't go ahead and cut those big rivets out of there, because this style mount uses 4 fresh holes on each side. It didn't come with instructions, but I know Speedway sells a similar mount setup. And they say to put them exactly like this and make sure you're 19 inches apart on the holes on center, which is what I did. But I think before I Swiss cheese the frame, I went ahead and put the mounts on the engine. I think I'll lower it in, make sure it looks okay. So my wife just came out and paid me a visit, and I was trying to explain to her that I'm putting the world's most popular engine in the world's most popular car, and it won't fit. The problem, as usual, is the cheap eBay headers. I mean, a Tri-5 Chevy, the exhaust clearance is kind of tight, but there's plenty of headers made. I've been putting them in there for 5 or 6 decades. So in this case, I bought, try not to make you sick here, a set of 3/4 length headers designed to fit a 55 to 57 Tri-5 Chevy. I'm glad I didn't go ahead and drill holes for the mounts, because I've slid the motor over, well, 3/4 of an inch. I got my clearance wedge in there, and I have this side fitting, so this header fits. Either way, I have to trim off the mounts down below for the mid mount that I'm not going to use. Well, what used to be the back mount, but I like that this, they claim the engine's in the stock location, but I can fit an HEI distributor in there. That's fine. But the matching header that's laying on the floor runs into the frame rail on the passenger side. So I had another set of 3/4 length headers, and I've stolen the passenger side off it, and this will work. I'm going to put V-bands on them anyway, get rid of the triangle collector, but this side clears no problem now. A little close to the firewall, but it still clears, it's fine. So I can use this combination, leaving the engine offset to the passenger side. I have no problem with that. And then I remembered I had a set of stainless, the center dump hot rod style. So the collector would be right about there. But when I hold it up next to the engine, this architecture is identical to the 3/4 length header that's on there. I don't like how small and restrictive this is, and you have to have a bend, so I'm not even going to attempt that. So I'm going to call it quits for tonight. Go think about it, whether I want to buy another set of headers just to move the engine back over, or just use what I have. In the end, I don't really think it matters. I thought about it, and I elected to leave the motor offset slightly to the passenger side. I've gone ahead and drilled all the holes, bolted up the mounts. Now put the engine back in. Sitting back down on the mounts, I really like this style mount. It's easy to just set the motor right on top of them and line the bolt up, shove the bolt up through the bottom. It's a lot easier than the other style mount from the side. And now I'll get my safety block of wood behind the valve cover, and I'll get rid of the engine crane, put her up in the air so I can work on mocking up the transmission. I have the bell housing mocked up in the back of the engine. I put a couple studs in it. A buddy of mine gave me this knob. You can't see it, but it's a wore out 5-speed knob, and I joked that one day I'd have a transmission to match it. And a couple days later I found this Doug Nash 4+1 5-speed. I haven't cleaned it or anything. I'm just going to stick it in there and see how it fits. I'm hoping the shifter clears the floor as is so I can mark the hole. Let's jab it up in there. Got the transmission pretty much in place. The shifter is interfering. It's all marked out in dirt and grease where I need to cut, so I'll slide the transmission back out and make a preliminary hole. So I just used a 3-inch hole saw, and that hole is pretty much money. The tranny will come down just a little bit when I finish making a cross member. I've got a strap holding everything pretty straight. I'm going to remove these from the side of the frame because, one, they're in the wrong spot, and two, they didn't put any tubes inside the frame, so they're just crushing the frame with the bolts. So my plan is probably just weld a bracket with holes in it here so the cross member could slide. Maybe I'll think ahead and make it long enough that it could slide back and forth some. We'll see. The car came with this cross member. If you have a Tri-5 Chevy, a second generation Camaro, and Nova, that'd be 4th gen Nova, I guess, 4th and 5th, cross member fits. It would easily bolt right in there with a little bit of work. But I'll use the square one that came with it. While they both work, I prefer 2 mounting holes for the transmission mount instead of a single. I think it's stronger. I mocked up the cross member and have decided to just bore 4 more holes, and this time put tube sleeves in the frame and use the existing long 3/8 bolts that were already in the holes before. I cut the tab off for the mount and moved it over 1 inch to match the offset of the engine. I guess that's the plan. But that hole is right on. It's not going to take much of a boot to cover that. I bored the frame all the way through 25/64. Then I opened up the inside to fit the tubing. Now I'll cut 4 spacers and then bolt up the brackets. So the cross member's all done. It works out nice. The bolts are all just long enough that you're not whacking your head on them, but they can do their job. I like the cross member bolts to point down in case the nuts ever fell off. The bolt would probably still hold the cross member on for a few more miles. If you're wondering why I mixed and matched headers, the driver's side that came with the one I used on the passenger side, this pipe comes straight down and would interfere with the Z-bar. Where this pipe snakes forward, giving hopefully room for the Z-bar. All the instructions I find online say it will not work with a manual transmission, but I think I have tons of room. The one downside to offsetting the engine to the passenger side using these pre-bought mounts is when that one went uphill and this one went downhill, I ended up having to space up this side motor mount that much. When I take it out, I'm going to add onto this motor mount, so I'll just have a left and a right mount. You know, the OEMs have been doing that forever. It's not uncommon, but is it ideal? No, but other than that fact, I like the mounts. I like the way the engine just plops down on it. I put on this gold oil pan for mock-up to see if the big sump would clear. If the world only had left turns, I would be fine. But if I turn to the right, the oil pan and the center link interfere. So, no big deal. I wasn't married to this pan anyway. But now I know it doesn't fit. So everything you've just watched, you might be asking yourself, why go through all that effort? Why not just buy stuff that bolts on? It is, like I said, one of the most popular cars ever made. The Tri-5 Chevy, with definitely one of the most popular engines ever made. But they're not exactly in their heyday at this point. Inventory has dropped down. There are header sets available, but I'm also trying to do this on the cheap and or using things that I had. So in this case, both of my sets of stainless imported headers, I got about 200 bucks in, both sets. The set that didn't fit, that I bought a month ago for this car, is identical as I stare at all the pictures on Jegs, Summit, Speedway, or whatever, that is sold, you know, for well north of $500, $500, $600, $700 for a name brand header that looks, I study all the pipes and everything because I know where the interference is, and I don't see any difference. And in all those cases, excuse me, cases like I mentioned, they still claim my Z-bar is not going to work, but now that I've moved the motor over, I think I have tons of room, and I'll make it work. Because I'm not a hydraulic clutch guy. I've already covered that. It'll have a manual linkage, or it won't have a manual transmission. So that's the way it is. But I think anything I would have bought, if I could have got my hands on it, I definitely would have spent a lot more money. Not sure I'd be any happier with the outcome. In this case, I wish I'd made my own front engine mounts, which is what I started to do a few weeks ago. And I just wanted to buy the biscuits, and I could buy the whole kit for the cost of the biscuits, and well, you saw the rest unfold. It's in there using most everything I had, so now I can build the 377 small block. I am waiting to pull the whole body off the frame, and I'm going to cut off the factory mid-mounts there. I could do it in place, but it's going to be a whole lot easier to just roll it outside and cut it off with a plasma cutter while I'm doing all the other modifications to the frame. And I'll clean up the underside of the floor. I have a rotisserie, but I'm going to try not to do a complete restoration. I just want driver quality, but it's going to be a lot easier to go flip the frame over to do the spring pockets and just clean up everything and paint it up a little bit to make it look nice. So anyway, I'm rambling at this point. It's the end of a long week. And again, working in this project in off hours definitely got me, many hours closer to the end goal of something. Driving it, I suppose. Hey, have a great weekend. Today is Friday afternoon. And I'll talk to you in a couple days.